Well, at the end of the 1300s, there occurred a severe constitutional crisis in England. Um, a king, Richard II, um, who had a long series of disputes with the other leaders of the kingdom and had ignored his, the idea of calling a council in many instances, um, and had behaved in some strange ways. Essentially, got into a situation where he was able to push Parliament into giving most of its powers, or maybe perhaps all of its powers, to a council. And essentially, the idea of governance by Parliament or governance with Parliament, with a council, began to go away in the sense that the council would broadly represent the kingdom. Now, Richard pretty much has whoever he wants to advise him. And as from Magna Carta, we know that even your enemies get invited to a common council. Richard was he came to the throne as a about 11-year-old. He was, he grew up with all the pomp and pageantry of being king. And there's some reason to believe that this may have affected him. Certainly in terms of his own view of himself, the little diptych here of Richard. And what you see here, that's John the Baptist. And these are two English kings who had been made saint. And they're looking over here at Mary and the baby Jesus with 11 angels, which is a little bit strange. The angels, by the way, are wearing Richard's symbol, which gets kind of sneaks right up to the edge of being sacrilegious. But, this view here where Richard is in gold with the gold crown on, and this strongly resembles the three wise men. And I think this is a pretty strong statement that Richard saw his position as one of being a king, yes, the head of state, but of being even more than that. Is that particularly with the fact that the angels are wearing his symbols, which was a white stag called a white hart. It indicates that Richard was perhaps overdoing it a bit. People feared him. He was capricious. His decisions were arbitrary, oftentimes inconsistent. And so there's real reason to suspect that Richard perhaps, as I say, was a narcissist or somewhere on that spectrum. He didn't seem to grasp that if you do enough damage to people who are very powerful, they can do damage to you. And of course, that's precisely what's going to happen. In 1399, Richard is going to be overthrown. He's going to basically call for an army to defend himself against an army that's invading him by a relative, is Henry Bolingbroke. Bolingbroke has a moderate claim to the throne. I would say it's a small claim, but it's not a large claim either. But he's going to get the throne. And Richard, now, there's a little bit of confusion as to what exactly happens here. But it appears that a parliamentary committee drew up 33, bullet points, for want of a better term, that things that Richard had done wrong, very much like Magna Carta in some ways. But basically, though, this is, the Magna Carta had a broad. These are things that Richard had done. And Richard then is apparently forced to go before Parliament. And notice it's Parliament, and this is really the key to this video. Parliament is accepted as representing the realm of England. In fact, that's the word that's used, which would include everybody. And while what we today call the House of Lords is by far the most prominent part of Parliament, there is a House of Commons, or there's a developing House of Commons. So Richard has to go before Parliament in one way, shape, form, or the other, and say, I renounce my kingship. I'm not a good king. Literally has to say that he's not competent. And so, from the Shakespearean play, Richard II here, giving away his crown. And the throne, which is set in Parliament at this point, is left empty. And his distant relative, Henry Bolingbroke, then essentially lays claim to the throne. And Parliament is going to acclaim him. And if you take a look at what Henry said, in the name of God the Father, God, Son, and Holy Ghost, I, Henry of Lancaster, he belongs to the House of Lancaster, challenge this realm of England. Notice the word realm there, so that's everybody. Because I am descended by the right line of blood from the good Lord King Henry III, and through that right God of this race hath sent me. So he's saying God has sent me to become king, which is very, this is an idea that's going to be around to the 1700s and almost into the 1800s. And of course, you can hear echoes of it even today. With the help of my kin, that's my family, that's the House of Lancaster, and of my friends, that's virtually everybody that Richard II had harmed, to recover, it means to recover, to reclaim, to restore the kingdom of England. The rich realm was in point to be undone. So he was saying that England was falling apart, not just in terms of politics, but in terms of religion and other things. And why was England falling apart, says Henry? For default of government. That is, the government was being mishandled. It was not being run properly. And the undoing of the good laws. So basically, and this dates back to Magna Carta and dates back to the Coronation Oath of Henry I. He's saying good laws are part of the realm. Good governance is part of the realm. And if you don't have those things, then there is no kingdom of England. So the importance of law, the importance of what we might call due process, to England as a kingdom is emphasized here. And that Parliament is part of this, is a protector of the realm, and is the one who gives power to the king, who gives recognition to the king, is an important part of this. So, and then God, through his bishops, God is interested in good governance and good laws. And what happens here is that when the throne is left empty by Richard, the two bishops, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Archbishop of York, lead Henry to the throne, put him on it, and as you can see here, crown him. So God is part of Parliament, part of the kingship, part of good laws, part of good governance. It's all wound together. And that's how people in 1400, because it's actually 1400 by this point, this is how people actually see England. It's not just a kingdom. It's a realm that involves good laws, good governance, the approval of God, and the involvement of God, truthfully. And that all of these things are mutually supportive. So the long run, therefore, and this dates back to the Coronation Oath of Henry I, and dates to Magna Carta. This idea is that England is more than just a kingdom. Yes, the kingship's important, but it's more than just a kingdom. It's a realm which involves the theoretical, good laws, the holy, the spiritual, God, the idea that governance should be good, due process should be observed. And of course, you should have a king who is mutually supportive of all these things, or queen. Because we're about to get into a period of time where there are some queens too. So anyway, there's a lot going on here in this thing, but this is not usually considered one of the great moments in the development of the Constitution of Anglo-America, but it really is, because it really says that everything has to work together, and so that's why we should remember this. It's a lost. It's not completely lost, but it's certainly a major part of what people are going to be carrying in their heads as they go into the 1400s, which are going to be terrible for England. But we'll come back and talk about that some other time. Stay safe, stay lucky, and above all, stay healthy. Thank you very much.